On my wedding day, I lost a game and had to feed his childhood friend alcohol mouth to mouth. In response, I turned around and kissed his best man, leaving everyone at the ceremony in shock. Mason and I had been in love for 8 years, and we finally held our wedding on National Day. I wore a bright suit, waiting quietly in the room for him to come. After waiting for a long time without seeing anyone, I heard a burst of cheers from outside. Looking up, I saw that it was my groom, Mason, and his childhood friend Claire. They had lost a game and had to face the punishment. There was no rush. Mason picked up the glass from the table, filled his mouth with wine, and kissed Claire's lips. Their lips and tongues touched, making a sound, and the wine soaked their collars. It took them a good 10 seconds before they separated. Claire's face was flushed, and her lips were bright red and slightly swollen. Everyone in the room turned to look at me. Their gazes were filled with mockery, sympathy, and schadenfreude. Claire's hand was still on Mason's waist as she looked at me intently, without letting go. With no trace of guilt, and even with a hint of provocation, Claire laughed at me and said, "I was just helping you test the wedding game. Don't be mad." I wanted to ask what kind of game would make you feed someone else's husband wine mouth to mouth at a wedding, but I kept my thoughts to myself. Surprisingly, I didn't feel angry at all. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. But my best friend didn't feel the same. She rolled up her sleeves, ready to start a fight. Mason stepped in front of Claire, glaring at me. "Audrey, if your friend dares to touch Claire today, this wedding is off." I nodded. I pulled my friend back and motioned for them to continue with the game. Seeing me silent, Mason assumed I was angry. "Can you stop being so jealous? How many times have I told you? Claire is just like a sister to me." His tone was full of frustration. I gave him a lazy smile and replied, "I'm not mad. You guys go ahead with the game. We'll wait in the room." Faced with my calm response, he had nothing more to say and sat down to continue playing truth or dare with his buddies. Soon, Mason lost again, and he chose truth. Claire quickly took the chance to ask a question, looking at him tenderly. "If Audrey weren't here, would you marry me?" As she spoke, she pulled out a black duffel bag from behind her, revealing stacks of $100 bills inside. "There's $200,000 in here. It can't be a dowry, so just take it as a gift." Faced with this unexpected scene, Mason froze for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. Looking moved and emotional amid the shocked gazes of the crowd, he slowly nodded and said I would. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they all turned to look at me. I got up from the bed, hiding my entertained expression, and began clapping. "Let's congratulate this couple for finally getting together. May you have many children." I said it sincerely, but everyone thought I was furious. Mason frowned and spoke up, clearly unhappy. "Audrey, how many times have I told you? It's just a stupid game. What's with this nonsense? Are you crazy? It's our wedding day. What do you mean by saying that? Are you trying to call off the wedding?" Listening to his accusations, I couldn't help but find it all amusing. Who exactly doesn't want to get married? He spoke again. "We're not even married yet, and your possessiveness is already out of control. I hate being tied down. You better change this nasty habit today." Saying that, he slammed the door. "You should stay in here. Narrow-minded and jealous as you are, we can't enjoy ourselves with you around." Claire looked smug as she provocatively held onto Mason's arm. "Don't worry. You stay here. We'll call you when the game's over." On my wedding day, my husband shut me out. I was forced to watch him act all intimate with another woman while the guests gossiped, holding their envelopes. Just thinking about it made me feel pathetic and ridiculous. But everyone else seemed to think it was completely normal. They weren't surprised by Mason and Claire's flirting. In fact, they acted like my role as the clown in all of this was perfectly natural. In the past, I would have flipped the table and screamed at everyone. It would have ended in an ugly argument. Mason would say that he and Claire were just friends, and I was the one with dirty thoughts. He would be disappointed in me, claiming I was ruining everything and didn't trust him. No matter what I said, he would give me the silent treatment and even meet up with Claire on purpose, just to make me jealous until I finally begged for forgiveness like a dog. Only then would he interrogate me, making me admit I was possessive to the point of being irrational and that I needed to trust him unconditionally. Over the years, through constant manipulation, I had turned into a lunatic who followed Mason's every word. Even on our wedding day, I still found myself instinctively questioning whether I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew it was them who were in the wrong. The door closed, cutting off the view, and only the noise of laughter and chaos from outside could be heard. I leaned against the window, watching the lively scene below. My friends followed behind, fuming with anger. This is just too much. If this wedding doesn't happen, who cares anyway? But any more words were quickly swallowed as they glanced at my expression and chose not to continue. Everyone thought this wedding wasn't Mason's idea, but something I had begged for. Not long ago, Mason said he wanted to marry me, and I agreed. I had naively believed that after 8 years of waiting, I was finally going to get my happy ending. But today's events were like cold water waking me up. My best friend, Sophie, who had spoken up for me earlier, was frustrated beyond words. "You've been humiliated like this, and you still want to marry him?" I looked at Sophie and said, "Then I won't." As I spoke, I started taking off the golden hairpins and jewelry. Sophie was startled and quickly stopped me. "Are you crazy?" But what Elle did next really shocked everyone there. I looked in the mirror, pulling out the golden pins that held my hair, one by one. With every accessory that dropped onto the vanity, I felt like I was shedding not only the weight of the hairstyle, but also years of humiliation and manipulation. Sophie stood by my side, holding my arm, looking at me as if I'd lost my mind. But for the first time in a long while, I was completely clear-headed. "Audrey, you don't have to do this." "Not like this," she whispered, her voice filled with concern. I looked at her but said nothing. There was a deep, unfamiliar silence inside me. The anger that would usually explode in a moment like this was now contained, cold, and calculated. I knew exactly what I needed to do. There were no more tears to shed, no more fights to be had. I was exhausted. 8 years. 8 years of my life wasted, waiting for a future Mason had never intended to give me. I removed the last pin, letting my hair fall loosely over my shoulders. Sophie watched, restless. "What are you going to do?" she asked anxiously. "What I should have done a long time ago," I replied, standing up from the chair at last. The moment I opened the door to the room, more laughter echoed from the hall. Mason was sitting there, next to Claire, laughing loudly, with everyone around them cheering him on. They didn't have a single worry. To them, I was nothing more than an obstacle to their fun. The woman he had promised to love, honor, and cherish was just an insignificant detail in Mason's grand spectacle of life. I walked down the corridor and into the hall with steady steps. The people around stopped laughing, turning to look at me, not with concern or respect, but with sheer curiosity. I was the main act in the circus Mason had created. And like the expert manipulator he was ready to ridicule me publicly if I dared to explode. But I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Mason looked at me with a smug smile. "Oh, you finally came out? I hope you've cooled off," he said, holding Claire's hand as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "I have," I said, my voice calm, almost unsettlingly so. "And I've made a decision." Mason raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh yeah? And what's that?" "I'm not marrying you." A heavy silence fell over the room. All eyes were on us, like an audience witnessing the climax of a long-awaited drama. Mason's smug expression faltered for a second, but he quickly recovered it. "Don't be dramatic, Audrey. It's just a game, remember? You're overreacting."
"No, Mason."
"The overreaction was believing you loved me. The mistake was thinking you could ever be a man worth respecting. But the truth? The truth is you never intended to be. And you know what? I'm done being the clown in this relationship." Claire tried to hide her grin, but failed miserably. She looked satisfied with herself, as if she'd won some kind of competition. I stared directly at her, unblinking, and continued. "You can have him, Claire. He's exactly your level. Two selfish cowards who deserve each other." Her grin vanished, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Before she could respond, I turned to Mason. "And you? Good luck." I hope she treats you the same way you treated me all these years. Maybe, when it's too late, you'll finally realize what you lost." He started to get up, but I raised my hand to stop him.
No.
There's nothing left to say. The show's over for me. I turned toward the guests, most of whom held envelopes stuffed with money, their eyes wide with shock. Oh, and for those who brought gifts, leave them with a happy couple. They need them more than I do. And with that, I walked out of the hall, feeling all their stunned gazes trailing behind me. Sophie hurried after me, unable to hide her proud smile. "I've never been so proud of you," she said. I exhaled, but it was a breath of relief, not sorrow. "So am I, Sophie."
So am I.
We walked together into the night, the cool air wrapping around me like a liberating breeze. For the first time in a very long while, I felt like I could breathe. There were no more doubts, no second-guessing what I should have done or said. I was free. As I walked out of that hall, something inside me shifted. For years, I had been nothing more than a puppet in Mason's hands, trapped in a never-ending cycle of empty promises and emotional manipulation. But now I was free, and not just free to move on. Free to make sure he never forgot the mistake of underestimating me. Sophie followed me to the parking lot, the cool night breeze cutting through the silence between us. I stopped in front of her car, and, for the first time in a long while, I let out a low, bitter laugh. She looked at me curiously, but didn't say a word. I knew what I was about to do wouldn't make sense to many people, but I didn't care. This night wasn't going to end peacefully. Not for Mason. "It's starting, Sophie," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "This is the last time anyone laughs at me without consequences." She smiled back, the kind of smile only a true friend can give. She knew that whatever I was planning wasn't reckless. Sophie had watched me silently for years as I lost parts of myself for a love that never really existed. But tonight would be different. "What do you need?" she asked without hesitation. "First, I need time. Enough time for him to think he's gotten away with it." The following week, I cut all contact with Mason and anyone connected to him. I disappeared without explanations, leaving no trace. I let him believe that my departure was impulsive, something he could ignore and move on from. That's how Mason dealt with everything. He ignored it until reality vanished. And for a while, that's exactly what he did. I knew he'd move in with Claire as soon as he could. He was predictable, a walking cliché who thought he was special. Tracking their every move was easy, thanks to Claire's obnoxiously public social media posts. Pictures of vacations, expensive dinners, and sickly sweet captions that made anyone want to gag. The perfect life, or so they thought. Meanwhile, I quietly laid the groundwork for my plan. I went back to school and built something Mason never thought I was capable of, a small consulting firm dedicated to helping women in situations similar to mine. Success came quickly. Within months, I had a solid network of clients and contacts. Each woman who came to me became another piece in the puzzle of my revenge. At the same time, I started gathering information, nothing obvious, just small details about Mason and Claire's finances, their lifestyle, and, most importantly, their debts. Mason had always been terrible with money, and Claire, even worse. It didn't take long to discover they were teetering on the edge of financial ruin, sustaining their flashy lifestyle with loans and empty promises. And that's when I made my move. I sent Claire an anonymous message hinting at a secret about Mason, that he had still been in contact with me all along. It wasn't true, of course, but Claire was predictable. She confronted him within hours, and the fights began to spiral out of control. Every word she hurled at him was another dagger in the fragile trust they had built. Mason tried calling me several times, but I never answered. With each attempt, I knew he was losing control, something he despised. His insecurity festered like poison. Meanwhile, Claire began to pull away, unable to handle the idea that Mason had never truly loved her. The happy social media posts slowed down. The vacation stopped. The fairy tale they tried to sell to the world was falling apart, and I had barely started. Then I went after their weakest point, the house they had bought together. Using the information I had gathered, I discovered they had used the house as collateral for a loan they couldn't afford. With the help of contacts from my consulting network, I quietly purchased the debt. Legally, the house was now mine. The morning Mason and Claire received the eviction notice, I imagined the panic on their faces. Claire would beg for a solution, and Mason, stubborn and proud, would refuse help from anyone, exactly as I had planned. Then I made my entrance. I waited until they were at their breaking point before arranging a meeting with Mason. I chose a small, quiet cafe, and when he arrived, he looked worn down and defeated. For the first time in years, he no longer carried the arrogance that had once defined him. "Audrey," he began, frustration heavy in his voice. "Please, we need to talk. This has gone too far." I smiled, a cold, distant smile, and stared him down.
No, Mason.
"It's gone just far enough." He looked at me, confusion flickering across his face as he tried to understand how I had flipped the game on him. It was a look I had waited years to see. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, as if he were the victim in all of this. "Because for years, you made me your joke. You turned me into a toy for your amusement. And now, I've decided it's my turn to play." He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised a hand to silence him. "Oh, and by the way,
Claire already called me.
she's done. She's leaving you." Mason paled. He knew he had lost, not just the house, but the only person foolish enough to tolerate his lies and manipulation. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. I leaned in closer, keeping my gaze locked on his. "I want you to feel exactly what I felt all these years. Insignificant and alone." With that, I left him sitting there, drowning in his own misery. There was nothing more to say. My revenge was complete. And the best part? I didn't need him, or anything he thought I wanted. I had my freedom, my success, and, finally, the peace he could never take from me. As I stepped out of the cafe and felt the cool air on my face, a genuine smile spread across my lips. Mason was the past.
And as for me?
I was just the beginning of my own future. After that meeting with Mason, something inside me changed for good. It wasn't just the feeling of victory over someone who hurt me, it was something deeper. For the first time in years, I felt light, as if I had finally let go of an anchor that had been dragging me down. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, I was at peace. From that moment on, my life only got better. I redirected all the energy I had wasted on Mason into myself and my projects. My consulting business grew faster than I could have ever imagined. Every woman I helped rebuild her life was like another brick in the foundation of a new version of me, strong, free, and fulfilled. Soon I expanded my business. I opened branches in other cities and built a team of people who shared my vision. In less than 2 years, my company became a well-known name in the field of women's empowerment and support. I was invited to speak at conferences, events, and interviews, and before I knew it, I had become a respected public figure. Life also surprised me in ways I never expected. I met new people, friends who genuinely cared about me, not for what they could take from me, but for who I was. And one day, unexpectedly, I met someone special. It wasn't the kind of love that burns and consumes, like what I thought I had with Mason. It was calm, secure, and mutual, something I had never experienced before. Personally, I decided to enjoy the little things in life. I traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, allowed myself to live new experiences, and rediscovered who I was without external pressure. I took courses I never thought I'd take, pursued hobbies I had been curious about but had never explored out of fear of being ridiculous. Today, my life is a sequence of small joys and significant accomplishments. As for Mason, he got lost along the way. With Claire out of his life and without the financial support he had always taken for granted, he sank into debt and loneliness. I heard rumors that he tried to regain the lifestyle he used to flaunt, but no one was willing to help him anymore. The people who used to surround him vanished, and over time, he became a shadow of the man he once thought he was. People sometimes ask me if I feel sorry for him. Honestly, I don't. I don't wish Mason harm. My revenge was never about destroying him completely. It was about setting myself free. And that's exactly what I did. He no longer occupies space in my mind or my heart. He's a closed chapter, a lesson learned. When I look back on the past, I don't feel sadness or regret. In fact, I feel grateful. Grateful for having gone through it all, and, most of all, for having had the courage to turn the page and rewrite my story. Today, my life is exactly as it should be. And the most important thing? It's mine.